Welcome to This Is Jen, episode 60, reminding you, as always, that iTunes reviews are my love language. I read every single one. Joe reads them. We talk about them. Oh, what a nice person. Oh, I love it that they said that. I love the feedback there, and I really enjoy what you guys have to say, and it helps me a lot as well. So if you have a second, leave a review for this podcast, This Is Jen, on iTunes. I would love to hear from you. All right, of course, we always have weekly bonus episodes. Patreon.com/thisisjen is the URL for that. We've got Shady Ray producing on site. We've got Hallie Lord off site. Welcome, Shady. And so those of you who are watching on video might see I have a very ostentatious necklace on. It's like a rapper would wear. Like
bling,
it's my bling. It's a dollar sign. It's a like fake diamond dollar sign necklace. And what's funny is we are recording this during Holy Week. So think of it as I'm rich in spirit is what I'm not trying to convey I'm rich in money, although we did just receive our stimulus check and we have 6 kids. But I'm rich in spirit. But to be honest, the reason that I am still wearing this is Shady and I have had the most exhausting morning filming, these sketches that I do.
So tiring.
On social media. And it's one of those things where, like, once you start, you sort of reach this point where we have put enough time and effort into this that we have to see it through.
It has to be. We have to nail it.
You have to have a finished product. But it is clearly going to be a lot. This
Trial
is a
and
bigger
error,
project
for
than we
sure.
thought it was. This is the story of my life. The story of my life, if I were to do a personal coat of arms, it would be a picture of someone biting off more than they can chew. That's all I ever do. I underestimate every project I ever take on. And by the way, for those of you who haven't been following my social media sketches, look me up. My main thing is Instagram. I am Jennifer Fulweiler on Instagram. You can also find me on TikTok. I very grudgingly post to Facebook. I really do not like that platform, but you can if you must. Look, if you're on Facebook, just get on Instagram, please. I'm begging you. For you, not for me, for you, make the switch to Instagram. It's a much, much, much more pleasant place. People they don't. Instagram and TikTok are the only 2 apps that you don't go to get mad. People on TikTok and Facebook, they're like, I would like to find something I disagree with. I would like to get mad. Like, a lot of people approach these apps that way. So if you're like a normal person just trying to enjoy your day, it's all this anger.
They're like,
anyway.
nope.
Yeah, Instagram and TikTok, they're fun apps. So look me up on Instagram. That's really by far my preferred place to connect with people. So you should see the sketches. Shady's involved in a lot of them. Sometimes it's just me. So Hallie helps me. Joe sometimes gets involved and is like, oh yeah, you should really rein that in. You should scale. Yeah, I mean, unless you're going to change your name, maybe scale that one back. And so the reason I have you guys look these up is I mentioned, I think in a previous episode, that doing these sketches has been a very interesting thing for me, that I faced this crisis when my stand-up comedy tour that I self-produced along with Hallie Lord ended 2 weeks before lockdown started in 2020. So that was unbelievably providential timing. And I've also mentioned, and I went into this a lot on Patreon, that I strongly felt moved. I felt this like God thing, God moment, God inspiration to rush the tour, like to do it now. And everyone's like, why not do a tour in summer 2020? Why not? That'll give you more time. So many people told me that. And I just had this God feeling, gut instinct. I was like, I can't explain it, but it has to be now. And I know it will be much more of a fire drill than if we gave ourselves a few more months, but I just can't explain it. It has to start in fall 2019. So sure enough, that ended up being very providential. But then with COVID, as you guys know, I quit my job as a SiriusXM talk radio host because the vision was that I was going to go on a fall tour. And I had I had a verbal agreement with a very famous and prestigious touring company, and I would receive a guaranteed income from that. So it was a great financial arrangement for me that even no matter how ticket sales went, I would get a guarantee from them. So it was a great financial decision. And back when I made the decision, I thought, well, yeah, this COVID thing is, it'll pass in a couple of months. I mean, we're definitely going to be able to tour in fall 2020. Come on. So, as it's turned out, here we are. Shady works in the music industry, so we have commiserated a lot. Both of our industries have been just kind of hit with an asteroid, 100% destroyed during lockdowns. And so, and even though things are coming back now, some people have asked, some comedians are touring right now. Why don't you get out there? But for me, it doesn't make sense unless I can gather pretty large groups. Just the effort of it and being away from my family, it just doesn't make sense. So I think it'll be a while. I mean, maybe in 2021, but it's not going to be like next month that I am back out on the road. So I was thinking about this, and I'm just praying about it, and not the most mature prayers, just like I occasionally don't even use the best language in prayer because I am a work in progress. I am on a spiritual journey. I seek to be better every day. But I'm like, God knows my heart. He knows what a horrible human being I am. I mean, I'm counting on his mercy here.
He made you this way.
He made me this way, right? Yeah, I don't know if he made the language using side of me. That might be my own. That might be my own issue there. So I was really like, why? Pray tell, Lord, pray tell, why would you inspire me? And I did think the whole stand-up comedy thing was from God. Like, why would you inspire me to do all this, to put all of this effort into learning this craft, and then just have it all? Like, you knew, Lord, that a pandemic was coming. Like, could you have, thrown that in? Like, maybe not stand-up comedy. Find a different industry. Knitting. A lot of people enjoy it. They enjoy crocheting. It's a good, solid. Be a homesteader. That's what he could have inspired me to do, Shady. I could have gotten some filthy, stinking animals.
Milking a cow by now.
And I could be getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning and milking some nasty cow. Look, I follow Ballerina Farm on Instagram. I'm so obsessed with her account. It's not healthy. Do you know this account? Because it fills me with so many mixed emotions. It's the most wholesome social media account that exists on the entire internet. The woman, she is 30 and she has 6 kids, and she makes everything like from her farm. Like she'll go milk the cow. That's a weird hand gesture. I'm sorry. Don't watch this on YouTube. Please stick to audio. So she's milking the cow
keep doing it.
and getting a bucket of milk. Well, I'm trying to show her milking the cow. All right. It's getting worse. It's getting worse. Okay, so
she milked the cow.
New policy for Jen's podcast. No more. I will never gesticulate in the manner of milking a cow again, because that just it didn't work like I thought it would work. So she'll go milk the cow. Look, this is a cow. So now I'm motioning that she'll milk the cow, and then she'll go into her farm kitchen, and she'll make like sourdough bread or whatever it is you make with fresh milk. She'll make it. I don't even know. And she like makes her own butter. She turns and she'll bake the bread, and then she's feeding her children this like crusty bread fresh from her oven with butter that she churned. And it's not like in the package, the Land O'Lakes package like we have. Oh no, it's like just in some parchment paper.
What is
because she churned it herself, and she just loves her life. She's like out and she's in nature, and she's getting sun exposure. I was just diagnosed with a vitamin D deficiency. She doesn't have one.
Probably not.
So this is, I really feel like this podcast is becoming known for its tangents. We're now on minute 3 about Ballerina Farm.
Sure.
And the point is that I'm obsessed with this account because it's like this great tension within me. In her Instagram stories are what you have to watch. Like it's like a priority in my life to watch the Ballerina Farm Instagram stories. And I'm filled with such tension because on the one hand, I have the good, healthy instinct where something very strong within me says, Jen, stay as far away from this lifestyle as you can because you have none of her talents, you have none of her patience, and you would die. Like you would be the homesteader that like you're starving to death and you have to go to a shelter because all the plants died and the animals ran away, and like you would not get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. You'd be like, I just because I have a farm does not mean that I cannot sleep till 11 a.m., and that wouldn't. I think that doesn't work. I don't know what you do at 5 a.m. on a farm, but I feel, I don't know, maybe I could shift the animal schedules. Like I milk my cows at midnight.
Make them nocturnal.
I don't know. Right. So The point is, I am filled with this tremendous tension where I'm like, I don't want that life and I need to stay far away from it. But then I'm like, but I should want that life. Look at my kid. They watch this stuff on YouTube. You know, like the other day, they said, what time is it? And I said 4:20. And even like my 7-year-old is giggling. We homeschooled these kids. If you guys ever feel tension about, oh, I sent my kids to public school, maybe they'd be more wholesome if I homeschooled them. No, these are lifelong homeschooled kids. Some of them recently went to school. But I know, they know all the reference. They've seen the Little Nas video, the new thing that's out. Like, no. So all this is to say, her kids are never on screens. Like, all they do, they work with the animals by the river. And you can hear the river chuckling in the background. And the birds are there in the sun. Okay, so obviously I didn't understand how many issues I have around this subject. I didn't intend to talk about Ballerina Farm this long. Let me wrap this up by saying that I am filled with an extraordinary tension of I need to stay far away from this life. It would not work out for me. But then I'm like, but I should want that life. I need to tell Joe that we are picking up and we're going to get a farm. And we're getting some animals, and we're going to live off the land, and I am going to bake things, and everything will be fresh from the farm. You know, if we have veggies, it's because, like, I dug it out of the ground.
Fresh butter sounds good.
Right. Like, I dug that tomato out of the ground, and I chopped it up. How do tomatoes grow?
I don't know.
Well, look, but these are the things I would learn. I would know these things if I were a homesteader. Do tomatoes grow underground? Nobody knows, but I would find out.
Nobody knows.
Nobody knows.
I've never heard.
Who knows these things?
Nobody knows.
We don't know. So, okay. So all this is to say, why didn't God call me to that? God could have called me to anything. He's God. And when I got that sudden call to jump into stand-up comedy and like to do it 100% and the time is now and you have to do this, God could have very easily called me into something more suitable for a pandemic.
I'm like, hey, you like cows now.
Right. He could have done that.
Yeah.
He could have been, because God's crazy.
Like, you ever seen a chicken?
Right. Yeah, and I haven't much, but I'm familiar. They go cluck, cluck, and they have the little beaks. Yeah, I know what a chicken is. And God could have called me to work with them.
True.
He can do what he wants. And he's like, I know.
If that's really his name.
I know. I know what I'll do. So there's like an asteroid headed for this one industry, and it's going to take it out entirely. And that's great. Where I'm going to send Jen into that one, not into one that, like, he could have. I'm technical. I'm a programmer. He could have inspired me a few years ago to be like, work at Zoom. Someone said we need to bring back the God voice. I used to have Google Translate their like voice feature be the voice of God. He could have been like, work at Zoom. So anyway, all of this is to say, I really had a lot of frustration around the subject and was like, why? This is the hardest thing I've ever done is learning the art of stand-up comedy. It is nothing in my career. And I mean, I did some pretty intense technical stuff for a while and really, if I may say, created some like pioneering things for the place that I worked. Nothing has even come close to the difficulty of learning stand-up comedy. So you can imagine how as soon as I got good at it and was seeing results and having the whole thing shut down, it drove me crazy. And it took me months of asking God, feeling sorry for myself. Why would you, like, asking him why he would do that? And then I realized that, I saw other people doing social media sketches. And I was like, well, I couldn't do that because, like, well, why couldn't I do that? And then the more I started to look at what other people did, I realized this is the art of stand-up. This is the same thing. It relies heavily on wordplay. Well, there are different types of sketches. There are some sketch content creators who they do more visual comedy. It'll be like a guy pretending to fall down the stairs or something. That's not my style of comedy. I don't do physical comedy. It is me sitting motionless and my mouth moves. That is my style of comedy. But I realized that a lot of my favorite comedians had turned to sketches and did this type of comedy. And I realized, oh, this is the same art. This is all the skills that I learned. I can totally use them. It's just for social media. And you know what it was? The reason it took me, let's see. I mean, depending on how you want to count it, it took me 10 months. to really, I mean, I'd sort of flirted with the realization, but to really figure it out, it could have taken me 10 days, but it had to take me 10 months because I was resisting that revelation. Because, man, I thought stand-up comedy was the hardest thing in the world. The scariest thing in the world is to do these sketches, because I've said before, you guys know that I think that one of the psychologically hardest things is to get up on a stand-up comedy stage and do your stuff, because if you tell a joke and nobody laughs, everyone in the room knows that you went for something and it failed. As opposed to regular public speaking, you are not expecting a particular reaction from the audience. And so the people in the crowd don't know if you're winning or losing, with that speech. But if you tell a joke and you hit that punchline that everyone knows is a punchline, and the room is just silent and people are checking their clocks and, looking towards the door, it's just, and you're the one on the stage, spotlight under you, everyone is only looking at you. It is a horrifically difficult thing. And so I thought, me shooting off my mouth again, I was like, well, that's the scariest thing you could do. Glad that at least in the entertainment world, I've maxed that out. It doesn't get harder than that. Well, the thing with sketches, what I didn't realize, there are actually some advantages to stand-up, that if I go down to the Vulcan in Austin, which is where I've been doing some shows, the Vulcan, and I actually don't remember the name of the bar that I was at on the one that I did recently. If I bomb there, I've been doing very well, by the way, but if I were to bomb, everyone leaves there. These clubs have very strict no recording. You can't record audio, video. I mean, they will kick you out if they see you recording anything with your phone. So there are no witnesses. There are witnesses, but the witnesses walk out and they forget. If you put humor on social media and it bombs, you've got a comm box full of everyone, including your haters, that were just waiting for this. They were just, they just have this like orgasmic response to seeing you fail and your sketch wasn't funny and other people are saying it wasn't funny. And then it's like, there's a written record here. And if you delete it, it actually makes it worse, because then your haters will be talking about, boy, was that pathetic. It was so pathetic she had to delete it. And then people have screenshots. And then people pay attention to the screenshots because they're like, wow, this must be some really interesting stuff if the creator had to delete it. Mm-hmm. So pretty much all sketch content creators, we sort of all have a policy of like, we just don't delete because then it just gives people too much fuel if they want to give you a hard time. So all that is to say that that's the hardest thing is doing these sketches. But I had this fear. And that's what held me back, was this fear that I think God was there with the realization all along. I think God was like waiting for that. It's sort of like he had that epiphany dangling in front of me that I can keep doing what I was doing. And in fact, there are actually a lot of advantages of it. I've had many people contact me who say, I live in remote Wyoming, or I'm disabled and I'm not able to leave the house. And I love your sketches because it's a way that I can connect with your comedy, even though I probably won't be able to go out to one of your shows when you're touring. So I'm reaching many more people. I'm gaining tons of fans. I mean, it's crazy. Like, my social media is like blowing up. And so all of this could have been mine 10 months ago, but I resisted that realization. I didn't want God to bless me with the answer, because somewhere deep down inside, I knew that the answer was really scary and was going to push me out of my comfort zone. And that's something that I am taking away for future reference, is next time I say, like, it just seems like something feels really off. I don't have peace in a certain area of life because it just seems like something just feels like it's not working. Like, you know how it is. Those of you who are people of faith know that you kind of know when it feels like an answer to your prayer is out there. Now, there are some moments in life when you're in a tough spot and you just kind of feel it, that I am supposed to stay in this tough spot. And this is what God has for me right now, and I'm going to grow from it. And that's just how it is. And I have peace with this. But then there are times when you say, I feel that this isn't right, and I'm not supposed to be stuck like this, and I don't have peace, and I feel like something's off. very, very often, the reason, at least in my life, that I have found that I'm not getting that answered prayer is because I don't want it. I don't want the information that's on the other side. And so that brings me to probably the main topic that I thought would be interesting to talk about today is how often we end up getting distracted or having anxiety, depression, all sorts of distractions, you'll see what I mean in a second, come up in our lives when there is something very big and scary that we don't want to think about. Maybe it's something that we already know exists and it's way deep buried in our subconscious, or maybe it's something like me with the sketches. It hadn't exactly occurred to me, but I just kind of had this sense that I don't know that I want an answer to this prayer. So this actually relates to what I'm going through today right now. One of the reasons I was so I mentioned that Shady and I did this sketch, which now, we're on a roll. We're having so much fun with these sketches. The one that we just put up was about getting the stimulus check. Big Family is getting the stimulus check. Again, look it up on Instagram. Jennifer Fulweiler is my account over there. And I still have my gold chains on from that sketch. And it was a slog to push through it today and to do the podcast today because I'm so exhausted because I woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning, which sometimes I'm still awake at that time, but for once I was actually asleep. And I woke up in so much pain, like a very extreme level of pain. And it's a type of pain that I know pretty well. And for me, one of the things, and I normally only talk about this on Patreon, but I think it's worth noting that when I have some kind of big, scary thing that I will not admit that it's there, but I really don't want to think about it because it just, I haven't, none of these conscious thoughts have played out, but I just feel somewhere inside that there's not a solution to this. So these conversations are subconsciously happening. I guess I'm not aware of them, but somewhere deep down dark in some sort of inner broom closet of my mind, there's some kind of decision of this problem is so big and scary and it doesn't have a solution, or if it does, you don't want to go for that solution, that let's just distract you. Let's just make sure that you are not thinking about this. And so for me, there are a few ways when that is going on, when there's something that I am trying not to think about, a realization I am trying to avoid, a truth that I am running from as fast as I can. For me, one of the ways that manifests itself is I have physical symptoms. And I went into all the details of this on Patreon. For those of you on my Patreon, you can look up episode 17, hardest podcast episode, including my 2-hour daily radio show that I did for years. The hardest segment I've ever done is in episode 17 when I talked about that story of chronic pain and how it often manifests in my life when, not just pain, but even certain types of illnesses, when there is something big and scary that I do not want to think about. And this is kind of a known mechanism that your subconscious mind can actually cause all sorts of symptoms to distract you when there is something you are trying not to think about. So for me, it has taken the form of chronic pain. It can also take the form of addiction. Sometimes when I wasn't in pain, that's when, back before I did my whole thing with alcohol, I would start turning to alcohol a lot more. Another way that I've noticed that it can kick up is I'll start fixating. I'll fixate on some little problem. I was asked to volunteer at the kids' school, and I didn't. I volunteered last time. Why should I have to volunteer again? Something little, it doesn't matter. Little stuff like that. But I will blow it into this huge deal. And I'll even catch myself being it doesn't seem, I am disproportionately upset about this. It does not seem like I should be this upset about this situation. And another way I've noticed it, this is more, a friend of mine has this issue, but she's noticed in her life, she'll start drama. If there's something big and scary, some realization, some way her life needs to change that she's running
look
from.
Over there.
Oh, no, it's not. It's not look over there. It's it'll be my cousin's brother's coworker is in the middle of a divorce, and I think I need to get involved. I think
Oh my gosh.
I think, I need to get her number and text her and offer to help. And, but she's mad at me because she didn't like the advice I gave. Like, she will either start drama in her own life. She'll start a fight with her husband, be like, do you remember that time when you were so rude to me? And I know it was 11 years ago, but it just never seemed like you were sorry. I mean, she'll start fights. She will get involved in other people's business. I mean, she'll create drama of like someone cut in line at the grocery store, and that would annoy us all, but she'll really like fixate on it. She might even start yelling at them and like turn it into a whole thing. So she's recognized in her life when she finds herself embroiled in drama, she needs to hit the pause button and be like, okay, I am doing this as a way to distract myself. I'm running from something. There is something in my life going on that I'm trying not to think about. And so she has a good friend of hers she'll call, and her friend will just walk her through these exercises where it's like, okay, let's take a level deeper. What are you really worried about? And then you keep asking that question. But what's deeper than that? But what's deeper than that? And it's very revealing. Another thing for me is I have thought that a lot of people in my family have a little touch of obsessive compulsive disorder where we really fixate on things. I mean, a couple of my kids have pretty mild but classic OCD symptoms, and that Shady knows what I'm talking about. That is definitely in our family. And so I've noticed that one of my kids, I can tell when he has something like that going on, that he will obsessively start cleaning. He always likes the house tidy, but when he is like freaking out, like a napkin was left on the counter, and like, how can we live in this house when a napkin is on the counter? Like, how can we live like this? It's like, okay, son, this is not really about the napkin, is it? Like, let's dig deeper. And sure enough, every time he's like, okay, yeah, actually, there is something else that's really bothering me.
There's a bigger napkin.
There's it, right? Well said. Actually, I'm going to make a note. At the end of this podcast, I am going to share Shady's quote of the day. That is just, you know what I mean, right? Do not let me end this podcast. If you hear me wrapping up, don't let me wrap up before I share the Shady quote of the day, because it's my favorite thing that Shady has ever said. It's so amazing. So okay, that's how we're going to label this. There's a bigger napkin. For those of you, especially those of you who have kind of a neat, organized personality type, that's great. And I think that's how whether you want to say it's your subconscious mind. You guys know I believe in spiritual attack and all that stuff. I think it can be a combination of both your subconscious mind and spiritual attack, sometimes one or the other. I don't know. It doesn't really matter what's causing it, but I think it can use our good tendencies against us. So if you're a person who likes things neat and organized, when you have a realization that you're running from, suddenly it will be like, again, there's a bigger napkin. Like, you'll be flipping out about little things. You'll be spending a lot of time kind of obsessively cleaning and organizing. And the motivation is not because you want your house clean. And then the final one, and this is big for those of us who are writers, and I've found this a lot, especially like in the days of blogging, is when you feel the need to write and talk all the time about how happy you are in a certain area of life, or about like how well something's working. This is what a friend of mine calls this the rule of absolute statements. When just out of the blue, no one asked. You know those memes on Twitter that or whatever that go around that it'll say nobody, and then me, and it'll be some outrageous thing implying like nobody asked for this, nobody wanted this. I would do this all the time in the blog world. It would be like, it seems, it's to the untrained eye, it could seem like I am not happy with my current circumstances because I never sleep and we're broke and, the kids are vomiting all the time. And, that to the untrained eye, it could seem like I feel unfulfilled, but like I definitely do not. I'm loving this. And, the suffering is like what the Lord wants from me. All my dreams of suffering have come true. And then it would be like, you know what? The next day, I should write about? I should write about how I am not unfulfilled. Because I'm not. I am absolutely not. And then it would be the next day, like, this post, I think I'll title it, Why I'm Not Unfulfilled. And you know, it's I just had this urge to foam at the mouth about like, yes, this area of life, it's working for me so well, and I'm feeling super good. The reason I needed to do that, this is a great example to unpack, that the block there in my mind was that it was a complicated situation. I was thrilled to be a mom, genuinely. Like, I just couldn't even believe like what a gift my family was and how blessed we were. And also, as you know, as a Catholic, as someone who is having an unusual number of kids at an unusual rate, and that was connected to being Catholic in a lot of ways, I felt like it would be a bad witness if I were like, okay, you know what? I'm not happy most days. You know what? I'm never happy. And I really, like, I don't know how much longer I can do this. I couldn't admit that to myself because even if this were private, even if I didn't put it out there publicly, I thought it would be saying I didn't love my kids, or I wasn't happy they were there, or I wasn't happy with my family life. And actually none of that was true. It was just I needed a different setup. Basically, I needed Shady, to be honest. Like, what I didn't realize is like people were not meant to raise kids alone. You guys have heard this tangent. I do this soapbox of mine. That was sort of the piece of the puzzle that I was missing, was that there was nothing wrong with my take on that situation. There was nothing wrong with feeling like, yeah, I'm not happy. This is hard. What I just didn't realize, like, women weren't meant to do this alone. Like, I was on basically a desert island where my husband worked all the time. Joe was starting a business. It was just me with these little kids all the time. And if you look at all of human history, women have never done this. Never, ever, never. Like, they lived in villages and they lived in family communities where the people in your village, you were related to the vast majority of them. So you would have nieces coming in, you know, to help you with the kids, or like a couple of grandmas would live with you and they would hold the babies while you were out doing water or, you know, washing the clothes or whatever. And the teens would be around to play with sort of the mid-age kids. Women have never raised kids in isolation like we do today. Now, at that time, getting even any babysitting, it just wasn't an option. It was not in the budget. But what could have relieved a lot of that tension is if I had just said, you know what, the problem is not my kids. The problem is not having a family. The problem is not even staying home with them. But doing all this alone, just doing all this without any kind of help, it's unnatural. And my personality type especially is particularly sensitive to this. And I need some help. And right now there's not really an option for me to get that help. But I think I would have experienced a lot of psychological relief. I would have been able to stop writing 5 blog posts a week about how I'm so fulfilled. I feel amazing. I love my life. I would have been able to stop foaming at the mouth about this subject if I had just said, okay, you know what, there's not a good solution right now, but at least acknowledging the problem. The problem is I'm doing something very unnatural that I already didn't have a great temperament to deal with to begin with. And so, you know what, I'll just keep my eye on the horizon for if a solution comes. And sure enough, after months of this, Joe and I finally got to the point where our financial situation wasn't much better, but we just really crunched some numbers. And we're like, okay, if we go bare bones at the grocery store, generic everything, and we talked about getting a new car. Okay, if we or like not new, but like our car was falling apart. And we're like, all right, if we keep this car that's falling apart and we take the money that we'd save for the other car, maybe then we could get a babysitter. And just acknowledging the problem relieved so much stress and anxiety, a lot of the chronic pain I was having, a lot of the anxiety and depression that I was experiencing, the fixations, the temptation to go to my usual addictions. Like in my case, like back at that time, my addiction was alcohol, and I would tend to use that too much. And so if I had just gotten it out on the table, brought it all out into the light, here's the situation. I would not have had to write all those blog posts that were ultimately, the goal of those blog posts was to convince me that it's true. And I think that's how the absolute statement thing comes about, when you see people who are repeating something over and over again. And nobody asked them to say this. But they just keep telling you, I just want to it could, to the untrained eye, it could look like I'm miserable, but I'm not miserable. I love it. I'm loving my life. the reason they have to keep saying that is because it doesn't sound true to them when they say it. And I know because I used to do this all the time. I probably still do it to some extent. And in fact, sometimes I will catch myself when I notice that I'm like, I have publicly said now 3 times this week, I've done some sort of absolute statement. I'm like, maybe this is not sounding true to me. And like, that's why I keep saying it. And maybe I need to explore this a little further. What's interesting is a couple of couples I've seen, some are public figures and some are people I know. And some of you guys will know what I'm talking about. You see a real peak of them talking about how thrilled they are with their marriages right before they get divorced. It'll be like a series of posts. And there's a particular public figure who you saw this with that like 1 week, it was like, we just have the best marriage. I'm so grateful for my husband. He's amazing. And like, I think it was literally the next week. It's like, actually, we're getting a divorce. This is not going to work out. And it's that absolute statement thing that I think that let's not use just one person as an example, but I've seen this many times that you say like, I love my marriage. And then you're like, it's funny because when I say that didn't sound right. You know what? I'll go on Instagram tomorrow and I'll say it again. I love my marriage. Did y'all hear me? I love my marriage. Like,
if I whisper it.
Right. Yeah. Maybe I'll say it in a different tone of voice, like my James Earl Jones voice. I love my marriage.
Yeah.
So to this day, I will catch myself doing it. I see myself making the same statement over and over again that I'm like, why did I have to say that 5 times this week? Evidently, that wasn't sounding true to me the first time I said it. So all this is to say, okay, so for me, another way, that is the constant public absolute statements. That is one way that these things can manifest. But the list is, both for me and what I've seen in other people, chronic pain, absolute statements, turning to addictions, fixating on problems, like turning little problems into really big problems that take up all your time, obsessing about things like obsessive compulsive, cleaning, actually fixating on your weight. I know that there is clinical anorexia, which may be a separate thing sometimes, but I have noticed with myself, sometimes I'll get really fixated on my weight. And it's like, this is not, the standard answer for that is you need to love yourself and love your body. And that's true. And that message is valuable and needs to be out there. But in my case, recently, it has been more like, this isn't really about me not loving the way I look, needing to accept myself. I am just fixating on my weight because I'm trying to avoid something that I don't want to think about. And then the final one is drama. Just, starting a fight with yourself. I will admit, there have been a couple of times where a few minutes into an argument, I was like, this is my avoidant. I did not need to start this argument. And I think, even though the pain that I feel is very real, I legitimately feel this pain. This was, granted, it was, one thing that he did, and it was 7.5 years ago. And he did apologize for it at the time. So, like, maybe I didn't have to, turn it into some federal case right now. And then I'm like, okay, how do I backtrack without saying I was wrong? Right? I am on a journey. I know that the right answer would be to be like, honey, you know what? I just realized that this is self-sabotage. I just realized that this is me avoiding, some realization of my life that I'm trying. Yeah. Shady, what was the hand motion that you just did? Oh, I thought that you were milking cows because that. Okay, I'm glad that we had that. Or who knows? So
instead of apologizing.
Yes, instead of apologizing. Yeah, and so and I know that is the right thing to do. And I should, as soon as I recognize it, I should just say, this was self-sabotage. My bad. And I take full responsibility here. And I just want you to know that this is not a real problem. And in fact, you know what? I owe you. I owe you an apology.
Let's go bake a cake.
For unnecessarily starting this fight. So I'm not at that point in my journey yet. The best I can do, I hope my husband doesn't listen to this podcast. The best I can do is just be like, well, I feel like this is resolved. I do accept your apology. I feel like, okay. I mean, it was pretty bad. I just do want to emphasize, that thing that you did 7.5 years ago. I mean, it was bad, and I'm glad I brought it up. But you know what?
Or you're like, I'm glad you brought it up.
Yeah. But who brought it up really? Was it me? Look, we're all We're all on a journey. This is the best I can do. This is my A game for like being a good person. This is as good as it gets. So for me, okay, so last night I woke up in extreme pain. So that it's like a wheel of fortune. Like you spin the wheel, what's it going to be this time? Lately it has not been chronic pain as much, but I woke up in agony. Like if I didn't know this was a chronic pain thing, I really think I might have gone to the ER. I mean, it was really pretty bad. But I know this is a very specific type of pain that has a very, very clear psychological connection for me. And if anyone thinks I'm crazy, read any book by Dr. Sarno. And he's like a real doctor, not like, he got his PhD from like the Wiccan Institute. Like he's an actual medical doctor, had some very interesting things to say about the psychological connection to pain. Go to Amazon, type in Sarno, Sarno. Just pick a book that jumps out at you. It's very, very compelling and interesting data there. So I've been working on this for years. So I recognized this type of pain, and so I did this journaling exercise that I've gone to recently, where you just do a brain dump. So I do mine on my computer so that if things get really crazy, I can just hit delete. And, if anyone were to come, I'm just imagining if I were to do that in like a real journal, and let's say it got put in an attic somewhere and my great-great-grandchildren find it. Because, when I find my ancestors' journals, it's always like, I thanked the good Lord for the sunrise today as the rooster crowed. And with mine, it would be like, sometimes I feel like, it would be like really insane. And they'd be like, wow, we didn't realize that we are descended from a crazy person. So I do my journaling exercise on my computer so that I can hit the delete button when I'm done. And that's how people recommend that you do it. So, by the way, it's very hot in this room, and it's exacerbating my allergies, which is why those of you who are watching on video see I'm constantly like scratching my face because I'm barely surviving this episode. So I woke up last night. I knew that this pain was connected to that. So I do the journaling exercise, and I just did a brain dump of, I think it would be about this. So tomorrow, Joe, my husband, is having surgery for sinus stuff. So I thought, I bet it's about that. I bet, maybe I'm scared, like something could happen to him or whatever. So I did a brain dump of kind of just, the goal is to just let your mind go, like whatever might be there. And I just wasn't finding everything. I was like, this is a kind of a minor surgery. I'm not, there's no there. So then I was like, maybe it's the sketch. Sometimes I do get like really stressed out, like, I don't like, what if people get mad at me for this sketch? Journaled about that. There was a little tension there. But then I realized so I just keep going, and I'm just not finding anything. I realized I had an interaction with one of the kids. It was a really minor thing. It wasn't like they were like, I'm smoking crack. Are you okay with that? It wasn't like that. It was just something one of the kids wanted to do that is fine, but I just didn't love the idea. And so we'd had a little bit of a tense interaction about it, but it was fine. It was resolved, great terms, ended the night, good night, love you, everything's fine, there's no tension. But I did not realize that it just kind of touched something. It touched on something within me just based on my own issues and my past and the things that stress me out. And when I started journaling, it was a weird thing. If you had asked me, like, did that interaction with the kids stress you out? Initially, I would have been like, I don't even know what you're talking about. No, that was fine. When I started journaling, there was so much there. And it wasn't about that kid. It was like my history, my issues that were touched on there. Shady. It was like, if you've ever seen someone like break open a fire hydrant and the water,
coming out.
The tension and the stress and like the drama and the memories. And then as soon as I got that out, and I kind of thought about it like, wow, I did not realize how much tension and anger and anger about like, things from the past, like 20 years ago, stuff like that, like having nothing to do with my family, but just like, wow, I hadn't resolved some anger I had about that one interaction at school like a long time ago that I was reminded by with this thing with the kid. And this is the craziest thing. I got the journal entry out. I realized I got to what it really was that was bothering me. And then the pain was gone 20 minutes after that, like gone. Like the pain was from, if I didn't know what this was, I think any other person would have gone to the ER. It was that bad. And then after I did that journal brain dump, I felt fine. Pain lifted. It was like it just disappeared. So what we're learning is that I'm insane. That is very much, I think, the takeaway for all of us. And again, this is the kind of stuff I normally talk about on Patreon, but I wanted to bring you guys into, because my point here is not as much about the chronic pain thing per se. Oh, I just remembered the shady quote of the day. My point is not as much about the chronic pain thing per se, but when you find yourself doing any of these things, whether it's like weird, totally unexplained pain that the doctors like keep telling you you're fine, but like you keep having this pain, or you keep making absolute statements about how amazing some area of your life is when like nobody asked, and like it's not even like a ministry you feel like. Actually, some people who have ministries who are like, I'm called to share how great this area of my life is. I will say that has not, as someone who's seen the behind the scenes of those, it has not shaken my faith in the rule of absolute statements. Just leave that there. Turning to your addictions, whether it's a substance, whether it's shopping, whether it's gambling, fixating on small problems and letting them just mushroom and turn into these huge things in your life. Obsessive compulsive behavior, fixating on your weight or cleaning or like the minutia of your physical appearance. Like, this eyebrow's off. I can't stand it. I don't like, it's not even with the other eyebrow. And then getting involved with drama. If you find that these things are happening, I can't encourage you enough to really think about, is there something in my life that I'm trying not to think about? And what I've found 9 times out of 10 is it's really not that bad when you get it out there. Like when I finally admitted with staying home with the kids, it's really not. I love my family. Truly, I'm grateful for them. This is awesome. This is really a fantastic life. But there is this issue of like, no one was meant to do this alone, and I feel very maxed out. I really don't have the right temperament to be on duty with kids 24/7, and nobody does. And then I could solve it, even though it took months and months, maybe even a year to solve, because we just didn't have the financial means to solve it. The stress, it was like I could breathe again. And actually, I would say maybe it's even 99 times out of 100. Once I find out what it really is that I'm running from, I'm like, okay, well, that's not, all right. It's a little tricky, but like we can find something there. This is really not as ominous as like my subconscious had built this up to be. So I wanted to share that with you guys, especially that like I'm really exhausted today because of that chronic pain moment. But I think that's a way God kind of brings good out of these things, that I was able to share it with you. And we all do it. That's the final thing I want to say on this. It does not mean there's anything wrong with you. I think every single one of us does this. We bring up these avoidance mechanisms in our life to just not deal with the things that feel a little bit dark and scary, and that our subconscious is like, let's just keep that one stuffed away in the closet. Like let's not go there. All right, so I want to end with the shady quote of the day. This was amazing. Okay, so I realized. So I've told you guys I have haters, and there are a couple of different internet forums where people have in the past talk smack about me, and they run me down, and they talk about how terrible I am. And I always find these things because I'm a stalker and a researcher, and I know, and these people, even the people who use anonymous accounts, they forget that my career before I got into all this was I not only was I in tech, but the main job that I had was we tracked user behavior across websites. So like I am professionally trained to be able to track people online, basically. So some of these people use anonymous accounts. I can almost always find out who they are. And so one person in particular was, now they did this under their real name with their real Facebook account, but it was in a forum that is locked, like that people, not just anyone, can get access to. But my spies are everywhere. So for those of you who run me down in private forums,
We'll find
my spies are everywhere. So I see the screenshots, and so this particular person, I mean, they were really quite nasty about me in the past. And so I was going through Patreon. I was downloading some Patreon data, and I saw their name They're a member of my Patreon. This person who, and they had very vicious things to say about me. I don't think they like changed their mind and want to be friends now. I'm almost positive they joined to just talk about what I do on Patreon and then run it down in the forum where they talk about me. So I was just thinking out loud, like, wow, this person really hates me, and that's crazy that they're a member of my Patreon. And Shady Rae, for the quote of the year, not the day, the quote of the year, what did you say?
I said, she's living in your brain, not rent-free.
Not rent-free. You know that phrase where you're like, I live it, like someone will be like so-and-so, like
living
Beyonce.
in her brain,
yeah,
not
they'll be like,
rent-free.
Beyonce lives in her haters' minds rent-free. You know, like that you live in someone's brain rent-free. Oh, no. I charge my haters rent. That's what Shady pointed out. Like, my haters have to pay me rent for me living in their head.
Just so they can
I
hate.
thought that, no, so now she can stay. Now that Shady framed it that way, that's fantastic. It's like, I don't live in her brain rent-free. She pays me rent.
Yes.
So I think that is a beautiful note to end on. My haters paying me rent to live in their brains. Thank you very much, Hallie Lord, for your off-site producing of this fine program of excellence. Get Hallie Lord's new book. It is called Falling Home. It is a fantastic read. Shady Rae, thank you very
Thank you.
much for all of your on-site production services. And of course, I do weekly bonus episodes every single week. We have not missed a week of this podcast. Patreon.com/thisisjen. And I will be back with you soon, episode 61, here on This Is Jen.